Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm taking a look at a new product from RunCam. This is the RunCam Mini FPV DVR, and before you get too excited, it's not doing the same thing as the RunCam Split. It is a standard definition DVR recorder that's designed to sit on your 20x20 stack, and you solder your FPV camera directly to it, and that will give you a 640x480 recording on a micro SD card. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, it's a trend that's happening at the moment, I guess, because when you are in a race, you can't run a GoPro on the top because it's too heavy. So the only footage that you have of the race is on the DVR of your goggles, and you'll have a lot of breakup in that. So the advantage of this is that it is on the copter. You will not get that breakup, so you have a clean DVR video of your flight in standard definition. So it is just a little tiny board, and it requires 250 milliamp, and it's designed, I guess, to run off the back of your flight controller, so you have to make sure that your back can cope with that. I think, you know, most of the HDLRC stacks can. I mean, they can cope with a RunCam Split at 650 milliamp. So you can see the voltage input there, 3.3 to 5.5 volts, so not a huge voltage range. The weight, just 3.5 grams there. We just have a single button on the front there, and then this is where your micro SD card goes in. It's very straightforward. It's designed to sit in front of your camera, so your camera will go here, and then this side will plug in to the camera port on your flight controller. Or, you know, if you are running directly to a VTX, then you can do that, but most people, I guess, are using Betaflight on-screen display. Now, a problem that has been with these DVRs is that it's been cutting the brightness in half, so you don't get any more latency by using this, but because it's essentially splitting the signal to a recorder, then it's been halving the brightness. So it'll be interesting to see if we have that issue with this, or if there are any latency problems. Let's take a look at what else you get in the package. So we have got the micro SD card protector and a bunch of standoffs, so that's designed to sit on your stack like that, and it stops the card from pinging out in a crash. We have got these extra standoffs here for your build, and then actually we have got, this is quite nice actually, these are the standard RunCam connectors there, so you can just solder that up, and you shouldn't have to do any resoldering on your copter. You are going to have the space for this to go in though, and I know on some of the smaller builds you might not have that space. So we have got a manual actually this time. Usually they just have the manuals online, but you can see there that we have got the video out, the ground, and then the voltage in. We've got a couple of LEDs on there, and then we've got the audio in, so it does record audio, video in, the ground, and then the 5-volt out to the camera. Okay, so seeing as there was no soldering required whatsoever on the copter side, I've stuck it on my mode 2 ghost build, and it just sits on the top of the stack there really nicely. You are going to need to have room though to have this in your stack, and you can see there it's maxed out. So I got my micro SD card in there. It's a class 10 32GB, and it seems to accept that. It's actually on a spring as well, so it clicks in, and then your protector just goes over the top there, so if you want to get it out, you've got this little tab, same as the Split, and then you can access your micro SD card. As soon as you plug your battery in, it starts recording, so it's a little blue LED that will flash, and then to start the recording, it's just a button press on it there, and the blue LED will go solid. And then if you want to start recording again, just another button press, and then a 5-second press of this button will format your micro SD card. So be very careful of that if you've got stuff on there that you require. Something that is important to note with this is that every 5 minutes it will split the file, which isn't too much of a problem on a mini quad because we rarely fly over 5 minutes, but for those who do, then you're going to end up with multiple files, and usually there's a little gap when it splits the files as well, so if you're trying to sync that up with something, then it might be a little bit more difficult. It also does not have a super cap built into it, so if you are recording and you pull your battery, you will lose the file, so you have to make sure that you press stop before you take your battery out. So here is some of the recorded DVR footage taken straight from the micro SD card on the Copter, and I have to say I found it much more addictive to watch than I thought it was going to be. I guess it's quite a unique view when you think about it. You know, you are seeing your FPV feed with zero breakup, and I guess I'm just not used to that, so perhaps that novelty will wear off, but I have been watching these flight videos back way more than I thought I was going to be doing. So it records at 24.99 frames per second with a bitrate of just under 8 megabits, so it's actually a lower bitrate than the DVR in the Fat Sharks, but I think the clarity of the picture makes up for that with there being no VTX breakup, and I actually have the DVR on the Fat Sharks going at the same time, so I can flick between the two, and as you can see, the feed is pretty much identical. Of course, you don't have the on-screen display as the DVR is capturing the video before that, but the good news is I couldn't even notice a difference between the live feed in terms of latency or brightness, so they have got it nailed in that aspect. The only thing I did notice is that I was getting slightly more noise on the live feed than I was before. Now, it's not debilitating, but it's definitely there, and I think it comes from the fact that it's sat above the VTX and it's going to be drawing more amps from the onboard BEC, and this is something that the Split suffered from as well. But you know, it's only very slight, and I have been really enjoying watching the footage back, especially on a day like this when the cloud is really low and I can play about trying not to lose it, or should I say get a load of moisture on the Copter. And you know, this Copter is tuned really nicely as well, and I don't want to upset it with the weight of a GoPro, so I have to say I've really been enjoying flying with this DVR, and I really like it, and I can put it in pretty much any Copter without soldering as long as I have got those wires connected. I think if you wanted to add audio, then you'd have to do a bit more work because the 3-pin connectors that they give you don't have the audio line, and as I said earlier, the majority of the micro cameras don't have a microphone bar a couple, and in a lot of cases it's the VTX that has the microphone as well. But you have that option if you have that kind of setup that can handle it. So you aren't going to get super high quality out of this, and if you're thinking a CMOS camera will perform better than the feed from your goggles, then that's not going to be the case. This is the RunCam Micro Swift, by the way. In fact, as a lot of the CMOS cameras are 16:9 format, you will have to stretch the recorded footage in an editor to match the aspect ratio, but I think that's going to be okay, and if you are in the market for something like this, then I think you will get a good experience out of it regardless of the camera that you are using. The only real complaints that I can see are with the 5-minute file split, especially as it starts recording as soon as the battery is plugged in. So let's say you had your Copter sat on the ground for 3 minutes before you take off, then you are definitely going to get some of your flight cut off, or should I say just a few frames as it switches between the two files. So I guess you can plan to do that, and you can stop the video recording and then restart it before you take off, and it should capture all of your flight. Unless you are flying over 5 minutes, of course, then you are definitely going to get a split in the file. And I'm sure there's a really good reason why they need to split the files, but with a 32GB card and the low resolution, it should go for much longer than that before it reaches the FAT32 file size limit. So to conclude, it's really cheap and it's really easy to install. it doesn't need any soldering once you solder those two connectors on, and if you are using a RunCam camera anyways, then you can just plug and play if it fits in your copter. And even if it doesn't fit on the stack, I'm sure you could sort of wedge it in there somehow. It doesn't alter the brightness of the image through the goggles, and it doesn't add any further latency. I couldn't even tell that it was connected. It does seem to introduce a tiny bit of noise to the VTX feed though, which I'm sure you could get rid of with filtering, and that might not be the case with your build, so that just might be my specific setup, and it's a amp heavy setup what I've got here. And you know, it doesn't have a menu either because it bypasses the camera, so everything is just done on the button with the LEDs, but I didn't find that to be an issue. And of course the files do split every 5 minutes, and it won't save the files if you pull the battery. But in general, I found the footage to give a really unique perspective, and I'm definitely going to be keeping it on this model. So I'll link it in the below, and if you found this video useful, then I'll link to my Patreon. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.